This conference will now be recorded.
Welcome everybody to the new ATAC committee. We used to be on the PPAC, now we're the ATAC. So welcome. I call the meeting to order. It is 9:30 and opportunity for public comment. And we do have Sharon Coleman. She wants to talk about the crossing of the 1620 South Martin Luther King Jr. Drive. There was an incident last year in December that maybe some are aware of. A friend, and I am horrible with names, I will tell everybody that now. Her friend was the other member mentioned in, they lost a friend at a funeral, trying to cross the street, and then her friend sitting next to her, I forget your name again.
I'm Linda Contrusi.
Linda Contrusi. She was the other person that was injured in the incident. And Sharon, if you want to go ahead and speak, it's all yours.
Well, I would first like to address that MLK Street is a 4-lane street. So you've got 4 lanes of traffic you must cross. Because construction of houses and more businesses being started within Temple, even in this area, there's much more traffic than what there has been in the past. This is a funeral home. It's called Don Summers Funeral Home. And this funeral home has 6 parking places on the same side as the funeral home. 6. There's more than 6 cars that usually come to a funeral. And this particular funeral, there were probably about 30 people that were inside. So the other cars, the funeral home has a possibility of using across the street, and that's where all the other cars were parked. So you must cross 4 lanes of traffic. When Rodney and I were about to park our car on the other side of the street, and we got to the edge of the street, Rodney made the comment, "This is a very busy street." And it was. We had many cars going before we could even cross. The other thing is that when we got out of the funeral home, it was dusky dark, and there were about 10 of us, so there were many of us crossing the street. But when we were crossing the street, 2 of our in our group, we thought we were all across the street, not realizing that 2 were still in the process of crossing. But you've got cars coming from 2 directions. One thing, when it's coming from, I say it's coming from the west, when it's, because you've got north and south of 53, and then you've got east and west. So if a car is coming from the west, it is coming, there is like a slight incline, and you don't see the car until it's right above or the top of that little incline, and there's not much distance on that car coming from the west. If a car is coming from the east, it's coming, you've got a little bit more distance before that car is at the funeral home. But another thing I want to mention is that when you are at a funeral, many times you have older people that are at a funeral. They walk a little bit slower than someone's in their 40s or 30s. And so that's another factor we need to think about with this crossing on a funeral home. Our first recommendation is that there needs to be parking on the same side of this funeral home. Any business that we know in Temple, if you have a business, you must supply ample parking for what your clientele, So this funeral home does not do that. There are 6 places to the side, and that's it. Nothing to the back, and then there's no other parking lot. So that's our number 1 proposal. In the meantime of getting that done, we would like to see, I would like to see red lights that would only blink when there is a funeral, sort of like whenever you're going with a school crossing, you know, you have blinking yellow lights, but it's only when there is, you know, children coming in and children leaving the school. So the same idea, and with a crossing walk. Another option is that the funeral home or the city of Temple, or both together, need to provide someone helping the people to cross that road, because it is 4-lane busy road or busy street. It is really a street. I call it a road, but it is a street. But it is a busy street. Because even during the time, we had many cars passing while we were trying to get back across the street. Even when I was crossing myself, I started crossing, but as I was starting to cross, a car had approached on the east end coming toward me, but it was far enough away I was able to get across the street. Wasn't there when I started, but it came. Cars do drive faster than people walk, and that's what we need to consider in this crosswalk.
So I'm Jason Texman, I'm in the planning department with
Yes,
the city of Temple. So thank you for coming out today. I'm sorry for what happened. I mean, sincerely.
We appreciate it.
We want to avoid this kind of thing.
Yes, we do too.
So reached out to our police department, try to see what they saw. When they arrived, it had already happened. So I think you give me a good idea. How fast do you think the vehicle that struck you, how fast do you think they were going?
The police, oh, go ahead, excuse me.
I don't know. I don't know the exact speeds.
The police said she wasn't speeding. There was no criminal charges given to anybody.
I did see that, but I didn't get to.
Yeah, but they did say that she was not speeding. I don't know,
Okay.
I don't know how
But
they figured that out, but
Yeah.
this whole thing has been, can I just,
Go
sorry,
ahead.
sorry. This whole thing has been like, it happened and we've been given no information. None.
It seems like the speeding is 40 miles an hour or 45 in that area. It's
Yeah, it's more than. you
It's
can get
more than
across the
30.
lanes.
more than 30.
So the first thing, don't let anybody blame y'all. This is not your.
Well, we
fault.
have been. We were told by the police that we were the ones who caused it. And we were, and the car had the right of way.
I'll flatly disagree with that.
Well,
but that's.
That's what I was
Between me
told.
and the officer.
And I told him how I felt about that, because that told me, and Janet walked out there and got her killed, you know?
We should.
But we do, we agree. We agree with you.
Yes.
So what I'm hearing you saying that, flashing light would be one solution. Even if the funeral home was to, and this can be done, I've done it myself for events that I've been part of, call the police and request
Mhm.
an officer just to be there
Right.
to help stop traffic. Just the fact that if a cruiser is parked up on the grass on the shoulder, because there's no shoulders, it's straight curve, I looked at it.
No, there's no.
But if the cruiser was there with the lights on, that's gonna get people's attention.
Mhm.
So those are a couple solutions that, that.
Could be immediate.
What I'm thinking. And the other one, and again, this is not to blame you, but it didn't occur to me, so just now, I knew you guys were there for a funeral. It's not just that it's typically older folks that go to funerals, but you wear dark clothes when you go to funerals, and they're usually in the evening. So that's gonna make it harder for the driver to see. Ultimately, the fault's with the driver. I don't know why the funeral home doesn't have the parking. If they were built today, they'd probably have about 30 spots. Because I looked on their website and looked at the pictures they have of the chapel, it looks like that one room you could probably fit 100 people.
Oh, yeah.
Our code, the way it's written, says for public gathering places, meeting places like churches or funeral homes or other things, you have to have one parking spot for every 3 seats. Well, how does a pew count for a seat? Is it 3 skinny people or whatever? I don't know. The fact is they don't have enough parking. I talked to my director, he said, yeah, they had looked at that before, to see if there was a grant that the city could help them pay for some pavement. They weren't eligible for that. So that's something we're gonna have to keep looking at. I don't know that we can help them. We're not gonna stop. If they wanted to put pavement down on that grass lawn on the other side, we wouldn't stop them. They just need to make that investment. The question for Mr. Summers is, does he want us to help? Are we able to help pay for the improvements on the private property? So I hear what you're saying. I've been talking to our police department, so I'm going to pass that on, reach out to the funeral home and see if they can request, policemen for a crossing safety.
I think that would be the least
Absolutely.
that could be done,
Absolutely.
but more could be done. Even on, if parking could be on the same side, that is the safest.
Agreed. Absolutely.
But even blinking red lights, and I mean red and not yellow, because people probably think there's not a school on that road or that street, so they might not would slow down anyway. But anyway, that might, just during the time of funerals. So
There are, and I'm not saying this is something that we will do, I'm going to look at it. If you go past Temple College, there's a couple different types of flashing pedestrian controlled signals that can be put in. One is kind of the flashing red light you might be thinking of. It's called a hawk, and I forget, it's like high awareness. I forget what hawk stands for. But it's a pedestrian controlled stoplight. So the light doesn't turn on unless the pedestrian pushes the button. At that point, it's a legal signal. Go across. The other one, we've got one right downtown by City Hall that's they call it a RRFB, rectangular rapid flashing beacon. And again, it's pedestrian control. We've had some issues with that because people see the warning sign that says stop when pedestrians are present. They see the white line and they just stop. I watched the guy get rear-ended one night. He didn't need to stop, he just did, and the person behind him hit him. It goes back to drivers paying attention. But those are two of the physical solutions that we could put in that could get drivers' attention. The third one, and this goes to the speeding issue. Yeah, maybe it's posted at 35, but we all know that everybody goes 9 over because the theory is the cops won't give you a ticket unless you're doing 10 or more. And I've been in some discussions with our Public Works Streets Department that works with the police department. They put out I call them the high score signs. I'm not a big fan of them, but I'm told they work, which is it detects your speed and it flashes it up. Say the posted speed's 35, you're going 43, slow down, knucklehead. So I'm told they work. I'm not sure I agree, but what do I know? But that may be a third solution is to put those high score signs and couple it with the police department just posting some random enforcement. We know it's always a speed trap. It's not going to change behavior. But if enough people just suddenly get surprised, the word gets around, that's don't speed through there.
Right.
So maybe the flashing speed detection sign, that's the proper name for it, not a high score sign. The speed detection sign coupled with some periodic enforcement is going to start slowing traffic down. So I hear what you're saying.
Yes.
Yeah, don't let anybody make you think this is your fault. We know people are vulnerable. We know people make bad decisions, but in this case, bad decision was not y'all. You had every right to be there.
I think we were just innocently walking across the street. I mean, and you just, and we didn't even see that car. And, both of us were knocked unconscious. So.
Yeah. Yes,
We're having a discussion, but whose decision is it to finally make the decision to appropriate the money to actually make the plan go into effect?
it's a great question. So that would go to Public Works, and then they would go to
Temple
Finance.
Public Works?
Yeah, the City Temple Public Works. So I work on a lot of projects finding the money for these things. And it depends. A lot of times I've been working on one this morning where we're going to do a project on a TxDOT roadway. So they reviewed the designs, but we pay for it. And it's heavily, our public works engineering is heavily driving the design, what it's going to look like. But it goes through public works, through their budget to get it in for construction. So the director of public works is a guy named Don Bond, and the city engineer is Richard Wilson, and the director of transportation is Kenny Henderson. I'll make sure, and I think Anita's got your contact info, so I'll share that with her. We'll make sure you get names, phone numbers.
Okay.
Yes, that would be very helpful.
She
Yeah,
gets
that's
that.
understandable.
Like I said, I've already reached out to Michael Phillips. He's the one that does streetlights and signals. So he's aware of it. So they'll be the ones to make the ultimate decision on it. Whether, like I said, whether it's the orange flashing beacon, whether it's a red, whether it's police enforcement, what the solution is.
I just want to say, I appreciate you listening, and we were talking to Gary earlier, I think Gary.
Yeah.
And, I mean, I know his heart, and I forgot her name, but their heart is in trying to do the pedestrians right, so I appreciate it.
I just want to thank you so very much for coming out. I know it takes a lot of courage to come out in the middle. I mean, this is such a fresh wound. Can you please tell me the name of your friend that passed away?
Janet Avery.
Janet Avery?
And there's a mistake in the notes here. It said 2 died. It's only 1 died, not 2.
Yes, and I corrected that. I'm sorry when I was gathering the information.
I'm living still, thank you, Lord.
Yeah. So hopefully in the packet, I updated that information, but for public record, I will be sure to update that.
Okay,
My
I
sincere
appreciate
apologies on that, Linda. And I think that Keller has something he'd like to
Keller
share.
Matthews, I'm so sorry for your loss. Thank you. I have a follow-up question for Mr. Beckman. Do you think it's a done deal if you call the police and notify them of an event that they will show up? That seems to be the immediate solution. I mean, the funeral home have a routine of notifying the police they have an event.
Yeah, I think.
It would take years to get a traffic signal installed.
Yes, it
But
does.
they could start tomorrow notifying police if that is a reliable response. Do you know if that is an assured response?
Like I said, we do the public works on Main and Temple, and you have to reach out a certain time in advance. And some of the churches in Temple have police traffic control. I don't know how far in advance that has to be requested. I know we do ours a couple months in advance, just so we just go proactive.
So people will plan their deaths a little better. The city can be.
Yeah, I know, I was just gonna say that. That's an open question.
Okay.
And ultimately, I mean, it should be the funeral home coordinating that. This is me just trying to brainstorm and find a solution. If it's not police, the schools can put a volunteer out there as a traffic control person. Is there any reason we would stop the funeral home from putting their own person out there, employee or a volunteer? Is there a solution that they can undertake without waiting on government?
Yeah, I did wonder if a citizen volunteer had the authority to stop traffic on a public road.
There's some gray areas.
Yeah. But if you're wearing high-vis gear and holding up a stop sign,
Yeah.
nobody's gonna object to that.
If someone, Matthews, comes down MLK and has to stop because a volunteer is wearing a vest and holding a sign to allow mourning families to cross the street, if they have a problem with that, they are wrong.
I have a comment. It just hurts me to know that this has probably been an existing problem for many years out there. And why did it take somebody getting killed for something to be done? That's what I don't understand. Why do we let something like this happen,
So I look back at the crash history. Yours was the first fatality in at least 10 years, and that's as far back as the data goes. And I didn't see a history of even non-injury related crashes.
But I mean, you can analyze the situation even before it happened and see that is something. I'm a nurse, and so I mean, you just have to see that possibly something's going to happen because you have to go across anybody walking across 4 lanes. There's a possibility of getting hit.
Did you notice if the streets are lighted, Jason? Did you notice if the streets are lighted?
They are.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's
I know that's pretty well, but I hadn't paid attention to the lights.
Ms. Linda, I just want to address your concern. One of the issues that our region has is that it is growing exponentially.
Yes.
And our roads cannot take all the traffic. And so it's a horrible, unfortunate situation that happened, and we're real sorry. But when you come to speak at meetings like this, you're making your voice heard. And I'm sorry it's at the expense.
Yeah, and I understand, I've got an emotional involvement in all this.
That's fine. We want you to, we want the space to be open for you. But that is one of the issues that we face every day, is that every single one of our roads is, you know, being heavily used, and our region with citizens and individuals living here is outpacing the growth of our road projects. And that's just where we're at, unfortunately.
And let me make something clear. Just because I look back in the data, you know, why didn't we do something before this? Don't know, we did.
Yeah.
But the fact is, we are doing something now. I don't know what that something's gonna be specifically yet, but this has already started, Public Works, Planning, and Police to start looking at that area.
Well, we appreciate y'all
So,
taking.
yeah, this is,
Thank
the tide's turning for what it's worth.
And you're speaking to the right group here. This is the Active Transportation Advisory Group. And as Linda, your husband, mentioned, we are very passionate about safe streets and roads for all. Yes, Cal?
I don't know the rules of order, so I'm going to try and manipulate that to my advantage.
Okay.
But I'd like to make a motion that this committee draft a letter to the funeral home, identifying that the long-term solution may take years, but we recommend immediate action, that they either designate a citizen volunteer to block traffic or call the police to slow traffic when they know that there's an event. That seems to be an implementable, immediate solution. And I think we could have the force of our committee's voice to motivate them to adopt that as a regular behavior.
I'm going to defer to James on that.
I mean, that would have to come from the director of the MPO, and I don't want to diminish the importance of this conversation and everything, but we do have a policy board that we are beholden to, and so.
Gonna come from the policy board with our recommendation.
Yeah. We'll pass this on to, we'll talk to our director after and see what he thinks. He can probably just write the letter, but I want to make sure he's okay with it. And we might run it past the chair of the policy committee, just because it would be on official letterhead from the organization. So they need to know, be aware, if we're, you know, he'll know better than I on what is okay and what is not, what the policy board is comfortable with. But we'll definitely work on that.
I'll amend my motion to suggest that we draft a letter to the director requesting that he send a letter.
Taylor, I'll help you write the letter. I kind of agree with everybody. On this situation, I kind of agree with everybody that I think this whole meeting is directed at the safety and giving this committee direction for the future going into 2026 and the rest of 2025. And by doing that, I think it would, like if Jason and Keller can get together and write the letter, I'd be happy to sign it and send it to the policy board and have the policy board look at it.
Yeah.
Of course, there are red tape on legalities of what, you know, we could send a letter and make recommendations, doesn't necessarily mean that they know that we're standing behind what we believe in. This is something we thoroughly believe in, the safety, and we get into it later in the slides, the safety of pedestrians, whether you're on a bicycle, walking, going to a funeral, hiking, trying to get from one place to the other, the safety of the individuals doing that. So, I mean, we can get that together.
Yeah, if you write a letter or even draft like some recommendations, we can share that with you, Brian, and we'll determine if that needs to go to policy board or not.
I have
But the
one more
recommendation.
Yes, Linda.
I was told by the police that there was plans of a lot being put in and crosswalk. Do y'all know of anything of
We
that?
don't have an active planned project for that area.
Okay,
It may be a good idea.
yeah.
Again, like I was telling you, when we get into it later in the slides in the master plan, that's something that we're going to be putting together. And that may be a recommendation from the public for that. Any other comments, questions? Thank you for coming, and sincerely, from everybody on the staff. Your loss.
Yes, thank you. And again, my condolences.
Thank you.
Okay, next action item would be approval of the minutes from last month. Action needed, we need to approve the minutes from the BPAC meeting from December 11th, 2024 from the meeting. Did everybody get a chance to read the meetings and everybody agree with it?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Motion by Joe to approve.
Second.
Keller seconds. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All
Aye.
opposed? Got somebody online? Okay. Did not know that. All right, so the minutes for the meeting from December are approved. Going on to the next item, item number 4, we're going to ATAC membership requests. So not to read all that stuff because I don't read well. Basically the bylaws we set up last month in December, we voted on how many people will be included, how much to make quorum, and then ATAC appointments and membership requests. And I believe we have 2 new appointments, and then we also have a membership request from Katie Hill.
The city representatives are going to be, I'm sorry, y'all.
There we go.
Here we go. Amy Atkins, is Amy Atkins here? City of Parker Heights, is she online?
So on the appointments, while we look for that, the City of Harker Heights is going to appoint Amy Atkins, the Director of Parks and Recreations. The appointment letter is within your packet. And then Tech Stock has appointed Rachel Perry. She's here.
Yeah, Rachel's here. Would you like to say anything, Rachel?
Specials Projects Coordinator with the Waco District. The appointment letter is included in the packet. You can read that. Is Amy online?
Amy's not online.
Amy is not online. Okay. And then for membership requests, we have Katie Hill. She's a dedicated business owner of Barra Brewing and people invested in the future of the village of Salado. Ms. Hill is now seeking nominations for the ATAC with a particular interest in running events. I also have to say she's interested in cycling events also. Her request is in your packet. And then the next person after that is Holly Owens from the City Secretary and Director of Planning and Development of the City of Gatesville.
Holly, are you here?
She is online.
She's online.
She's online.
So Katie, the floor is yours.
Thanks for your consideration.
So I've known Katie for a couple of years. She runs Barra Brewing. She does a weekly, I'll speak for her because I like her. Her concerns are with the city of Salado and what they're doing in and around her community and her business. She's very dedicated to running. She's holding 5 or 6 running events this year. And she also supports the bike ride that goes on Monday and Thursday nights from her brewery. And we ride around all around Salado and then come back. And then, of course, we use her parking in her business. But she's very behind her community and what she wants to do.
The Christmas bike ride was.
I agree, yeah.
I'll speak to Kitty Hill's commitment to safety. If you've been to Salado and walked on the Main Street Bridge, that sidewalk's not wide enough to let 2 skinny people pass. And I'm usually the one jumping the curb to let other people stay on the sidewalk. The Hills spent their own money to build that pedestrian bridge across the creek to allow folks to park over Pace Park, get to the events that they put on, and to get there safe. So in terms of being committed and spending your own money, that's not a small thing to recognize.
So, and Holly, you're online. Would you like to say anything?
Just that I'm very interested in becoming a member and hopefully a contributing member.
And I do like to bike and I'll walk everywhere. Me and my husband is that couple that whenever we visit a city, we rent bikes and we take those funny bike tours of the entire city. So that's what we do. But no, I do I bring some experience for planning and development and trying to make little towns walkable. I think it brings a certain beauty and atmosphere to a town. And being with the city of Gatesville, I'd like to bring a voice to the table as well. So hopefully you will consider me. So thank you.
So Holly came to the meeting in December and brought a couple people from Gatesville, and they learned a lot with our funding program on how to get money for different things. I know Jason from City of Temple helped them out a little bit, gave them information on how to gain funds and how the whole system process works. So I believe she'd be a valuable member. So the action needed, we need to consider approval of all the new ETAC appointments and membership requests. Does anybody have any questions for any of the nominees, or should we just see if we can get them elected? No? Come on, somebody's got to have a question.
I have a concern that Paige's involvement with this committee may distract her from her other ongoing valuable activities.
I would have to agree with that. She's a good cook, by the way. You just got to get on her TikTok.
I do have a pretty full plate, but ever since moving to Salado, my interest in public spaces and the use by the public of, our city and a community started with public art. Public art changes the way we interact with public spaces. And I think it's the same when we think about active transportation. And I love that this committee even considers paddleboarding. We had a couple of horse riders come up on our property at the brewery this weekend. They were, following the creek. And just, it's amazing the kinds of things and the way being in different modes of transportation change the way you interact with your community. And if I can help make it safer in this region, I would really love to.
Anybody else? So recommend approval of the nominees.
I'll make a motion to approve the new nominees as members of the Active Transportation Advisory Committee.
I'll second.
Joe will second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it, so the motion will pass. Welcome to the committee. I guess the policy board has to confirm it first, but I'll be there next week. If they don't approve it, then I'll have something to say about that. Go ahead.
While you're amending membership, I'm listed as a representative of the Baylor Felton White Cycling Club. Since I retired, I no longer have that status. Can I change my registration to citizen at large?
Yes.
Okay, yes, you can.
Does that require a motion? Or is that just
That's what I was
an
looking.
admin change? He's already.
I think it's an administrative change.
That's what I was looking at, Jay. Okay. So next agenda. Agenda item number 5. Activities 2025 activities scheduled for stakeholder engagements. One of IETAC's primary purposes is to promote public interest and awareness of bicycle and pedestrian events within the KTMPO area and beyond by collaborating with stakeholders and community partners who organize activities and encourage active transportation. In support of this goal, staff requests that ATAC members take the lead in organizing various activities throughout the year to promote these efforts, as outlined in Table 1. These activities will also include a resolution sponsored by the MPO. Draft copies of the proposed resolutions are provided for review. There's staff requests that ATAC members provide input prior to submission to the VP for approval. And we're going to pass the floor over to Anita.
Thank y'all. So in the past with our activity updates, we used to include all those types of activities and staff updates at the very end of our meeting. And what with this new
board, I'd like to recommend that we take our activities and focus them around the resolutions that ATAC recommends to policy board. And 3 of those resolutions they're all in your packet. But the first one would be the National Bike Month in May of 2025. The second one, and this is a new one, this is the first Saturday in June as National Trails Day. And then the third one is the National Pedestrian Safety Month in October. And each of those resolutions has a list of opportunities for our members to take the lead and organize an event. And the first one coming up is National Bike Month. I know that Baylor Scott and White McLean's Children, they're holding a bike rodeo on May 5th. Previously, they had been hosting that event in October, and they did move it to May to go along with the National Bike Month. Then there's an opportunity for any of our members to take lead and organize National Ride a Bike Day, Bike to Work Week, Bike to Work Day. And I know that last year, the city of Nolanville hosted the Ride of Silence. So I'm not quite sure. I know that Teresa is online. If they want to take up and lead that event again. Teresa, would
Yes.
you like to?
Yes, Anita, yes, we would absolutely love to do that. So we will take on the national, yes.
Okay.
The Ride of
And
Silence. Yeah.
Teresa, if you could double check that. If you could double check that date to make sure that I did that correctly, I would appreciate it.
Okay, and I'll get back with you, Anita. Thank you.
Thank you. And I believe like the goal would be for our committee to support each other and to lead the way in our community by organizing some of these events.
Anita,
yes, sir.
do you have the details for the bike rodeo day on the 5th?
I do. I can send those out.
Yes, please. I'd like to, my schedule permits, I'd like to visit on that.
It's a great one.
Yeah. I mean, they've come
Thinking the same thing, so.
and they've come and presented, and it was Charlie Ayers.
Oh, Charlie Ayers.
Came and talked about how they worked to get the bikes and helmets and teach the kids how to maintain, not just ride the bike,
But
tighten
build
the
it.
chain, keep the air in the tires, and the kids get to build their own bikes, and it was part of that. They had partnered with McLean.
Yeah, it's a STEMS program, and it's Rent Your Bike. I believe it's called Rent Your Bike.
So yeah, I'd just like to go out and see that.
Well, last year KTMPO had a table there, and what they do is they give every child a card, and you sort of, it's like a bingo. You go to the table, you learn something. So I taught on pedestrian safety, that everyone was a pedestrian, and we gave out these cute little neon vests that they go over, but it's just shaped like a V. So it's not swallowing up the child, and so it just like sits over their necks, and it's a neon vest, and they learned about pedestrian safety, crossing the parking lot in HEB, and then we stamped their card, and that's how they were eligible to be in the raffle for a bike. Yeah. And so, and they're, I mean, I love it, all their work. So yeah, I'll send that information out.
Thank you.
And if anyone else wants to take the lead on any of these events, please, they're going to be listed in the resolution, but as a staff support, I would love to see not only the dates listed, but one of our members taking the lead and having their name next to that in the resolution. The next one is Trails Day on June 7th. And actually, it's a National Trails Day, but also Texas Parks and Wildlife, that's on their calendar as well. So we have two collaborating agencies at a national level and then at state level. I think it would be great if we had a trail cleanup. If someone would like to lead and organize that, a biking event, a hiking event, paddlecraft event, equestrian event. And then in October is National Pedestrian Safety Month. And I'm not sure how many years that we've had a resolution for Walk to School Day. But I believe that 2025 is the year that we actually have a school participate in this program. I don't know what it's going to look like, and I know it's a big ask. It's a big, hairy, audacious goal, but I think it's possible to have one of our schools in, we've got Bell County, Coppers Cove, well, Kipner doesn't have a school, but surrounding areas really organize a walk to school day or a walk and roll to school day. And I would like to encourage everyone to look at the resolutions and look at the language. And before we submit these to the policy board, send your recommendations to us if you'd like any of the language clarified, please.
Sorry, Nature called, and I missed the discussion on National Trails Day.
Yes,
What'd you say about it?
I said that this is the first time that we're going to be doing a National Trails Day with a resolution. And these are opportunities for any of our members, our stakeholder members, to take the lead and organize an event.
I expect I can get the master naturalist engaged to support that. And one of the trails that we should feature is probably Camp La Jolla. They have changed their mission from being a private, primitive camping environment for scouts to a publicly accessible glamping location with opportunities for multi-generational engagement. They want to get grandparents out with their grandkids, staying in Australian outback style tents, and they've got 4 air-conditioned cabins, a dining pavilion overlooking a lake. And they have 3 or 4 miles of trails that are gorgeous. And the master naturalists have supported them. We have to get their permission, but I think that we could do an activity for National Trails Day. They'd be interested in promoting that to the area. They have a big lake there, and they have kayaks and canoes. If we could find Katie, somebody interested in paddleboarding or kayaking to lead an activity on National Trails Day, we could have people hiking and paddleboarding. The trails are bike friendly. They're pristine. They don't need cleanup particularly, unless you want to move some rocks. I don't think that they have planned for horses, but that's an opportunity I'd be happy to take the lead on.
Thank you so much, Keller. I saw that you wrote Katie in, so.
I appreciate you taking the lead because I have a 5K that morning in Salado. We're doing the YMCA Village People 5K. But that afternoon, I was thinking a paddleboard up Salado Creek. Maybe that evening I could organize a paddleboarding event up Salado Creek or tie into the camp.
Have you seen Toy?
No, I haven't.
I'd love to show it to you.
Okay.
They've got how big this lake is, 3 or 4 acre lake.
That'd be perfect.
And they've already got a boating facility.
Okay, we'll talk offline.
Y'all coordinate and let us know how to proceed. This is a great conversation.
And on
Thank you.
the trail cleanup, I'd like to throw Keller under the bus, and maybe you could teach a clinic on some techniques to improve trails rather than doing a trail cleanup, giving an opportunity. I have a perfectly good group of people that would want to come down and see that. They're the high school mountain bike team here locally, NICA. They get credit kind of for doing different events. But having you guys teach everybody, including me, how to fix certain trail issues that you run into, water runoff and stuff like that. I think you're the guy that knows how to do all that. So.
Yeah, we have to.
Any other comments? Okay, consider approval of activity schedule, organizing an activity, and recommending resolutions to the TPPB.
Make a motion to approve the schedule.
We have a second?
Let me correct Mike. I'll use the wording on screen. So I'll make a motion to approve the activity schedule, organizing activities, and recommending resolutions to policy board. Leave no stone unturned.
Thank you, Jason.
Joe seconds it. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it, so the motion will pass.
One more comment.
Oh, go ahead.
The American Hiking Society organizes that National Trails Day.
Yes.
On their website, they've got a search feature, and there are no events within a 100-mile radius of our area, so we could put ourselves on the map.
Yes.
Even better.
Like the way you think, Keller.
You're
So this is an agenda item that I had added, and I think this is where we get into what we're looking for from when Jason was in charge and where our future is and the performance ahead of schedule. One is, we'll talk about this later, is the master plan, and the second is safety. So every year, the KTMPO and the policy board has to approve a yearly safety performance targets. Safety performance targets. So here you're looking at the historical crash data from 2018 to 2023. They get this data off of the system. I forget what the system was called, but they get the data off the system and then they project what they feel that they need to be at in the future. As you can see, the number of non-motorized fatalities and serious injuries, that includes us. That's the pedestrians and the cyclists and that are injured just doing what their daily activity is. So in FY 2024, that was their target. And then they went to FY 2025 as their target. You can see that they decreased. It looks, good. However, when you start looking at the numbers, they're hard to reach in any part of it. This is fatalities overall, I believe. Yes, fatalities overall, serious injuries overall. And then the slide that I want to talk about, and I think that we as a committee can change. In 2023, we had 44 fatalities of bicycles and pedestrians overall. We're still waiting on the data from 2024. It's early in the year, so we should get that.
This is our only in our KTMPO jurisdiction?
Yes.
Wow.
So you can see that since 2018, it's kind of trended up, gone down, trended up, gone down. But again, what we're looking at is the growth in the Bell County region is just, it's out of control. So 2023, I would expect, and I hope not, but I would imagine 2024 numbers might be higher. Hopefully they've made a change and gone down. But I think this is why we're here. This is where we make the change. How do we get these numbers to go down and what can we do? And I think part of that goes into the master plan of what we feel is the master plan. And then like Sharon and her family and friends that were here, what can we do overall as a community, not only for trails, but for also just downtown? I mean, a lot of people like going downtown, making the connections within the trail. The big talk in the policy board and the TAC is there's going to be a transition to I-14 and I-35. But how are we going to get from Temple to Belton? I've talked to Jason. I hate to throw him under the bus on this, but can we get TechStock to pay for the crossing to go underneath the freeway that they're going to expand in that area? I don't know when the goal of the plan was for that, but I know it's coming. I think it's like 2029 or something like that. But how can we get money invested from Belton, Temple, and get this project done whenever TechStop does it? Because they pay for a lot of things that they'll pay for. They'll pay for walking overpasses over land. So that's stuff that we need to look at. How do we connect trails, communities, and different things like that? My big project, and Jason knows this better than anybody, is Fifth Street. How do I get from the trail on Fifth Street to the other side of the loop without dying and going over that bridge on Fifth Street? And that if you do it in the right spot and you get TechStop to pay for that overpass, that multi-use overpass, you can go right into the trail system that connects you to Scott and White, the college, and then the VA. There is a spot, I don't know. I know Jason's been looking at it because I keep hounding him. And I don't know if it's ever going to get on the docket, but hopefully by the end of 2025, I get that project at least on my docket. Another one that we were looking at, if we don't have anybody from Nolanville, is that if you build a mile of multi-use path from the high school to the Dana Peak Road, it's a mile. Every school in that community can go from there to Dana Peak safely and on roads. So there's little projects out there that we all know about because we deal with them and we're the people on the roads. We're the ones walking, we're the ones hiking, we're the ones riding, we're the ones doing everything. I know Katie has her pet project that she's concerned about, and it's also a concern for all the cyclists and the runners in her community. It's Royal Street. I'm not going to hide it. It bugs me that what they plan to do with Royal. It's not progressive thinking, it's just the fix right now. So I think that's where we fall into, we need to be progressive and think ahead of how this community is growing. On that note, I'll open it for comments.
One of the things that you hit on this, we spent time talking about this tag, is understanding, the vision and the goals and the objectives. Vision, no fatalities, no injuries. That's perfect world, but that's the vision. Our goal is to get below that number, bring that number down. We may never get to 0 fatalities. Can we get to 40? Can we get to 35? So, it's important to set that goal. And then from your goals, then you start setting objectives. And you look at the projects that you're promoting, do they help you reach that objective? If there's an area that everybody looks at and says, this is a huge problem, but there's no documented data, there may be a perception of a problem, but there's no documented problem. But there's areas that do have a documented problem. Then spend your money and your resources and your time to solve that problem. And after that, go back and look at the data. Did that project achieve what we wanted it to achieve? And if it didn't, let's not do that kind of project again. If it didn't, why not? And one of the examples we talked about and the MPO has done is the congestion management process. And they looked at data on 190, now I-14 during that transition of traffic, crash rates, level of service, measures of congestion delay. Once they opened that up and put the 6 lanes in, then the traffic flow improved. So that was, by that measure, a successful project. We had one in Temple where we widened Prairie View Road out to 317 and even realigned. There was an offset intersection. It was a mess of an area. Great decision to realign those, bring that boulevard out. It has reduced crashes in that area. But around the same time we opened that road, Belton ISD built a new high school. So from the safety aspect, realigning Prairie View was a success. When they looked at it from the congestion management process, they were looking to see, did that project improve traffic? And it was a wash. Because the traffic and the delay, the queuing at that signal was about the same as it was before. So we didn't improve congestion. All we did was keep it from getting any worse with the addition of a big high school, which granted is going to drive a lot of traffic. So I don't think that was anticipated. That was before I worked for the city when they brought that in. I don't think the school was anticipated. Maybe it was. But if you were to say, did that project solve the congestion? No, it stayed the same, but you had to understand what was happening at the time in the context. So we kept it from getting worse. It was still arguably a good project. But that kind of analysis is what we need. And the MPOs provided on their website, you can pull up a map of hotspots. I've done it. When I worked here, I continue to do it at Temple, find out, let's look at the crashes. 3rd Street, intersection of 3rd Street, 31st Street, certain areas going down Adams. There's some known hotspots. Fix those. And, the question is, well, how come you're not doing anything about that? Do you not care about that? We do care about it. It just may not be the biggest, most pressing need that we have to address. But that'll come out of the analysis that the MPO is going to do. Show us where those hotspots are. The cities will bring the projects forward to address them. And then look, did it achieve its objectives? If it didn't, why not? Well, maybe we put a crosswalk in when what we needed was pedestrian bridge. We can continue to just have a cycle where we learn from it, but we can't just sit and go, well, it's going to be 64. Our goal is 44. This is the start of the process. So it just has to be a continual cycle of implement, analyze, react, reorient, come back around, keep working on it. Sorry, that was my soapbox for the day.
Thank you, Jason.
Go ahead.
think I've been on this committee 8 or 10 years, and I was shocked today to hear about this pedestrian death. Maybe I missed a meeting where we talked about other pedestrian deaths, but it seems to me that we should review every pedestrian or cyclist death. As representatives of the government, we need to be aware of what happens in our area. And I would recommend that we review every death or some report on the deaths in our area at every meeting. And I would recommend that whenever we adopt a project, we adopt a strategy like Jason is mentioning, where we monitor it along, so that we know if we make these recommendations, where are we in that process? I felt frustrated when we recommended scoring for projects, and I got disconnected from what the follow-up was. Which projects got funded? Where are they in that project implementation? I think we should have a list of a dozen projects that are underway and where we are on those projects, either reported at every meeting or reported on a website that we can access outside of meeting time. Jason and I talked this week about how TxDOT prioritizes projects that have injuries with fatalities. And I think that that should color the recommendations that this committee makes. I'm wildly enthusiastic about a bike path between 31st Street and Belton, but it's not going to happen because it does not prevent traffic fatalities. It doesn't get prioritized by TxDOT. So we need to focus our energy on those activities that will be prioritized by TxDOT.
Keller, that's one of the recommendations. I've been part of the Safe Streets and Road for All Regional Safety Action Plan, which we've got a meeting tomorrow afternoon to pretty much finalize that plan. And that's one of the recommendations out of it. Other cities and other regions do that. Anytime there's a fatality, they convene the fatality review board and they call it different things. But yeah, that lines up with one of the recommendations out of that plan.
And do you see, Jason, process-wise, does that happen in some office in the city and they report as presented to us, or do we conduct our own inquiry into causative factors, review police reports and concerned family members that want to come before our committee, or so? That seems kind of tedious and in-depth, but at some point it needs to happen.
I think it starts with the police department, because the first responders are going to be the ones that have the data. They're going to be completing the crash reports. Anything, any data, any information, decisions we make from that starts with the police.
Sounds
like
like
first responders.
This example, the police were blaming instead of analyzing, trying to prevent the accident. And I have to add one other thing I was thinking is, I would be embarrassed for myself and for this committee if we identified a target of 44, 34, or 24 deaths. I think our goal has to be 0 deaths. And we can face our failures every meeting. I'm okay with that. But we have to say our target is 0.
That's the vision. The vision is 0.
So the target is 0, but unfortunately, me and Jason have talked about this before. It doesn't take into compliance somebody running across I-35. That still counts as that number.
That should count as that.
Nobody had control over that. It was just a random thing. It does count against the numbers. But was there something that we could do to do that?
I saw a pedestrian death if somebody jumps off the overpass into the highway.
Yeah.
As we really can.
We should look at every one of those incidents.
And then I talked to TxDOT after the TAC meeting about the barricades they put on Killeen on I-14. And they couldn't believe the millions of dollars that they put up to put that extra barricade so people wouldn't run across I-14. Yeah, you had a problem, but now you've changed the problem. So where did the problem move to, rather than fixing the problem? And again, it goes back to active transportation. How do you get from point A to point B safely?
Yeah.
If it's TxDOT putting in an overpass, walking overpass, then that needs to be part of the plan. But you can't do it on, every mile on I-14 because somebody ran across the street and got killed. But like you said, reviewing the plan, and I agree, I don't know how far you guys need to go into depth, because we have the rating scheme at the end of this. How you guys went back and said, was this a good project or not? If it's reviewed by the MPO or it's reviewed by each town and city and said, yeah, we picked this project, it ended up being good, or we picked this project and the MPO came back and said, well, we didn't really solve the problem. So and my dad's famous for this. any solution to a problem changes the problem. So we put these barricades up on I-14. We didn't fix the problem, we changed the problem.
Right.
So again, does it take a fatality like the family members we had here to change the problem? 1 in 10 years? Is that gonna implement the temple and the NPO saying, hey, we need to do something about this? Or can we see into the future and say, with the growth of this community, how can we change it and make it safer? And who can we get the funding? TxDOT has funding.
Is there a map that shows where these fatalities and serious injuries happen, like the hot spots? And can we see like over the years? Because all of these graphs, the numbers have practically doubled since 2018. And I'm like, why? Why doubled? Has our population doubled? But I would love to see like, where are the hot spots? So when you're looking at prioritization, is there a trend? And like, I think you can look at the trends to see the future.
I agree. We should review that at every meeting. See a map of where those incidents are even fatal and non-fatal.
We have
Can you send it to me?
we have a map. Yeah, we can follow up with a link to Jason's pointed up here, but we have a dashboard on our website that has all the crashes and you can filter by when, what year, where it is, if it fatal, serious injury, not, was a pedestrian involved, was a pedestrian not involved. And it's all the data that we get from police reports that are processed.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
probably not all crashes because it doesn't account for crashes that don't have a police report attached to it, but any crash that there's a police report filed and whatever the result of that was, we have that information and we update it yearly.
Is it possible to get that on every meeting agenda?
I believe that would be a member comment, and yes, we can add that to the meeting agendas.
Does it identify cyclist deaths or just pedestrian?
I think it differentiates, for our jargon, we combine them, but I think it differentiates cyclist versus pedestrian. Pretty sure that's right. It differentiates cyclist versus pedestrian, right?
Yeah. I just showed her that one's that filtered for pedestrian crash and did a heat map. East 6th and 317 Main Street, hotspots. This is good discussion. I think we may be drifting a little off topic of, setting the goals, but it's one of these things that you can't just take one action in a vacuum. One of the things that the safety action plan, it was something that I knew, having talked about this and thought about this for years. But it broke it down that there's a number of factors that go into preventing crashes. One of them is project. What's the infrastructure? Is the infrastructure deficient? Does it create a bad situation? What decisions do people make? The crazy pedestrians in I-14, that's a bad decision. People speeding through a school zone is a bad decision. But humans make mistakes, humans make bad decisions. So then you go into what's the education? How do we educate people to be aware and not make bad decisions or make just human error? If we can't educate them to make good decisions, how do we mitigate the results of bad decisions? Some of that goes back to the roadway infrastructure. If there's a problem with people going off the road and rolling in the ditch, put a guardrail up. So you're still a knucklehead of a driver that can't put the phone down and you drift off the road, but instead of going in the ditch on the roof, you just tear your door off. Not my problem. The automotive engineering is a big part. There's people surviving crashes now that people would have been killed 20, 30 years ago. Not just airbags, side airbags, front airbags, restraint systems, crumple zones, glass that doesn't shatter and spray you with shrapnel when you hit a deer. So there's a number of factors, some of which aren't really the purview of this group or the TAC or the policy board. We're part of a bigger ecosystem. So there may be things that we do, we put a good project in, and there's other factors out of our control that number continues to grow up. The pandemic was a weird one in a number of ways. we saw crashes go down because there were people on the roads. So what we saw was the serious injury and fatality crashes went up. Now, is that because people were tense, or distracted, or in a hurry? They're still trying to parse the data on that. I don't know if we'll ever get a clear answer. But that was something that, while we were working on projects in this area, some of the context changed, and the numbers, fatality and injury numbers, reflected, I guess, systemics or societal changes. So there's stuff we can control, and there's stuff we can't.
I want to speak to that, Jason. Houston has become a national leader in their management of homelessness because they orchestrated a multi-agency collaboration between not only their housing authority, but their crisis intervention, addiction treatment, mental health, getting people on Medicaid. They had this multifactorial approach to treating homelessness. And I think that we may find if there are 5 fatalities at one location in Killeen because one bar is over-serving and people get in their cars and drive, or if we find that we've got 8 deaths that were due to mental health crisis. Maybe we need better mental health in Gatesville, Texas. I would say, let's look at all of those and see what causing factors are identified and make that a purview of our committee to facilitate interagency collaboration.
So we've done the post-project analysis for the congestion before. The MPO hasn't done the post-crash, post-project analysis. That's something that TAC asked the staff to do. So I think we're asking the same thing. Good. Because it's one thing to look at, the crash numbers going up. But we do need to go back after the fact and identify, filter, is it a pedestrian crash? Has there been a project in this area? Has the crash number, injury number, and fatality number, have those numbers changed? And you just have to start looking at the reports, and you just get way into the weeds on the data.
Right. You may know local numbers, Jason, but nationally, traffic fatalities were on a long decline, maybe a 60-year decline until about 2020. We got down to about 40,000 deaths per year, and now they have been on a 4-year escalation, where we're up to, instead of 40,000, I think 50,000 deaths per year on American highways. And I expect we've had a local increase in prevalence, but I don't know our data, and that seems like something we should know if we're on the transportation.
And that's, the graph you see here has changed a couple times. We've talked about it twice at TAC, and that's the reason they put that star there, even though we don't have, the confirmed 24 data. And we've got a close idea of what the number is. And to start when including in this graph, and I think y'all are still figuring out how to best do that. But when you do the director's update and you show the air quality numbers, to have some, periodic, here's where we're at with fatalities. For some reason, June we saw a spike, but at least we're monitoring that.
I would appreciate that.
Yep.
That would be
Yeah, it's in progress.
Thank you for that input.
So I think this,
I would just say one thing, Keller, to your requests for the review of every fatality. We can look into how to do that. The biggest hurdle is there's a delay in the data that we get, like the confirmed data. It comes out annually. We can look into maybe doing a quarterly poll, but sometimes if there's a crash, like that report isn't uploaded until there's some issue with the timing. So at least on an annual basis, we can definitely look at it, and we'll see if there's a way to do it quarterly, but it may not be every single.
And I don't mind seeing incomplete data or erroneous data, but I think patient data is essential that we identify where they happen. Deaths or non-fatal, ideally include the non-fatal accidents, but we need to know what's going on in our area.
Yeah.
but if we look at a project, so this is a discussion that leads to the rest of the whole everything. And I think if we have a slide like Katie said, and everybody knew where the fatalities were, when we go to the next slide. Keep going. Back to the transportation master plan that we talked about. So we'll just go into agenda item number 7 real quick. But this is part of the active transportation master plan that we were looking at. connecting external stuff to our internal stuff, but I believe this should also promote our internal. There's a lot of sections that go so far and then stop and then go so far and stop. Well, the city planners thought at the time that they built those sections that that was a good idea for them to be there. Yeah, that may not be the plan now, but now you have all these sections that are not connected. And we're not connecting from the outside world. But being able to take the fatality data over there on a map, and then when we get to the last, I think it's the last action item, which is we have a voice on how we vote for projects and what we feel are pertinent. And we'll get to that. But in September, we talked about recommending a transportation plan to identify regional multi-jurisdictional trail networks within the KTMPO region and connect them. December, we continued to talk about it, and the staff requested and received confirmation that the committee was interested in staff development of a regional action plan. This is why we're here. This is the fatalities, the connecting the master plan, taking all the data that we can, and then on the last portion of the slide, I'll hand it over to, this goes to you, Greg. I'll hand this over to Anita, but it goes to the last part of our meeting on agenda items, I believe. On our agenda items, but go ahead, Anita.
Thank you. As Gary mentioned, we started talking about this in September, and so here we are. Staff has, since December, staff have been researching the different MPOs that are comparable to our region and what their active transportation plan looks like. So beginning after this meeting, we're going to start working on some public involvement and begin developing our visions, values, and purposes. And also you'll be hearing from staff requesting some data collection on your master plans so that we can lay those inside of a greater map. And the intention is that by September this year, we'll have a review, a draft review ready, and a final public involvement after September 11th, and plan adoption by policy board by October 15th of an active transportation plan. And so staff has done a lot of research, and we're going to begin with James. He's going to share what he's learned. And go ahead, James.
Thanks, Nina. I won't talk long. I think the biggest thing that I liked about Laredo Webb County, their MPO is a little different because I think it's housed by the city, so there's a lot of collaboration, and it's primarily looking at the city of Laredo. But they had a whole section on why we need active transportation that I thought was really insightful, and like for people who don't know, or maybe don't, everyone in this room understands active transportation, why it's important, but I thought they had some good research and some good thoughts in there. And so having something like that in our version of active transportation master plan for people who aren't as familiar with active transportation or what it is or why it's important, or maybe even policy members who that's not a priority for them, like explaining this is why it's important, is really beneficial. That's the thing I pulled from their plan that I liked.
Thank you, James. And that document, I took a look at it, and that executive summary, it has 16 pages of why we need an active transportation plan. I thought that was pretty intense. So another thing that I like that James brought up is all their public engagement for those plans were held at community parks and rec centers. I just thought that was brilliant. Next is the Mid-Ohio Regional Planning Commission, and Sam, he researched that one, Sam?
Yeah, so this one was pretty interesting because in terms of the percentages that they talk about, it's interesting to note that within the 3 miles of a distance, 50% of the trips can be taken using active transportation methods. So they can be, people can walk, use bicycles, or other methods such as public transportation. And then you have 50%, which would require for you to use your cars because they are 3 miles or more. But for the trips that are below 3 miles, it was interesting to note that they had actually studied these trips can be taken using other forms of transportation other than personal vehicles. Also, they have a good traffic analysis that they have done, which kind of covers in a way to understand what the percentage of bicyclists would be that are comfortable in using busy roads. So it kind of shows that more than 50% of the population are not comfortable using busy roads with a high volume of traffic. You have about 4 to 7% of people who are comfortable using busy roads and where you have a heavy traffic volume. But then most of the other people who have participated in surveys are not comfortable, and they would require separate bike lanes, marked roadway systems that can help the users of the road differentiate between vehicles and pedestrians and bicycles. So that was pretty informative.
Thank you, Sam. I would like to just go back to the screen right here, the percentage of short trips. When Gary, Lisa, and I went to a conference in September, this is one of the huge promotional points of view at this conference, is that families that live within 3-mile radius of schools, grocery stores, activity centers, hospitals, anything like that, they're more apt to begin walking, biking, or taking public transit. And so I just thought that to see this again here was really important to the work that we do, as, you know, not very many subdivisions have all those things within a 3-mile radius, but it should be at the forefront of our mind when we're planning and thinking. The next is the Rio Grande Valley MPO, and I think that was David.
Yeah, I really liked their emphasis on community health, just because, you know, obviously, like the raw hard data that we're going to be working with, you know, reducing pedestrian fatalities, reducing accidents is really the most important stuff. But I think it also opens the door for, you know, measuring some activity that might not have those same numbers attached to it. You know, are people leading healthier lifestyles? Do they feel more connected to their community? You know, by being able to go down to Main Street and shop there. You know, I really like them kind of opening the door to you know, to some of that information that you know can let them know if they're doing a good job. If people, you know, are feeling more connected with their community, if they're, you know, choosing to walk instead of drive, and you know, feel healthier because of it, feel happier because of it. Because I think it really brings human elements to the work that, you know, that active transportation brings. So yeah, I really like that aspect of their plan.
Did you get an idea how they measured that?
I mean, I didn't. Was it fully stated in their plan? I think because I think that I think it was just their kind of mission statement purpose. I don't know if they fully outlined exactly how they're going to track some of that. I mean, I'd imagine a lot of it would be kind of just survey data, you know, for people who are in kind of areas that are in walking distance, say, of you know, economic areas, you know, Main Street or to third spaces, you know, parks and stuff like that. That's kind of the idea I got from it. They didn't fully lay it out from what I was able to read, but that kind of seemed the direction that they were going to go with that.
David, could you speak to their facility comparison in that one report?
Oh yeah. Another great thing that they brought up was kind of defining and comparing different kinds of pedestrian facilities. So, I mean, obviously, you know, we know the difference between the different types of, you know, kind of roads and streets and stuff like that, and, you know, crosswalks and pedestrian refuge islands. You know, a lot of that jargon that kind of gets thrown around. But for someone who's reviewing a plan, you know, the average Joe, they're going to have no idea what a lot of this, you know, this terminology means. Like protected bike lanes versus a bike lane. You know, average guy might not know what that means. But in their plan, they set about defining those types of things, comparing them. You know, hey, this might cost more, but it's also easier to implement. You know, this is a bit more difficult to implement, but it costs a bit less. You know, stuff like that, which I think it goes a long way in kind of communicating that information to someone who might not be very well versed in active transportation. It gives them kind of a clear idea of what these terms mean, what they actually look like on the ground, and how that kind of stuff is implemented.
Thank you, David. Another thing that I liked about this MPO is in their vision statement, they actually use the term integrating active tourism to support economic opportunity. And I know when, once again, when Lisa, Gary, and I went to that conference, a lot of the active transportation, at the heart of that was economic opportunity for the community and how that really increased that. So I appreciated that vision statement. And finally, we have the Central Texas, I'm sorry, I keep saying Central Texas, my apologies. Central Arkansas Regional Transportation Study. And Kendra, would you like to share on that, please?
Yes, similar to the first region that we heard about, they really had to develop a why for them as a selling point, a public attitude, a perception among their users. What I really liked about the Central Arkansas Transportation Study is that their region being as wide as it is and all of the different factors, the geography, the rivers, the trails, the roadways, they had a trade-off of different, they called them measurable or intuitive trade-offs. So they divided their region into different corridors per se. So they had a northeast corridor, a south corridor, and as long as each of the corridors through their project prioritization aligned with the guiding principles of the entire plan, the entire committee, they then could ensure a more cohesive transportation network. And they understood that there would be some give and take between the trade-offs of the intuitive or the measurable considerations as well. And then lastly, similar to what Katie was mentioning earlier, the sense of place, they really knew that the attitude change or the buy-in would be more than just putting down sidewalks and pavements for trails. It had to be a full experience for the user. It had to be a sense of place. So incorporating trail amenities, restrooms, what's in it for me. I know that there's going to be park benches, places to rest, dog parks. There's going to be art. There's going to be other stimuli beyond just the moving concept of walking and active transportation.
Do y'all have any questions for any of our presenters or staff?
I have a comment. One of the things I really enjoy about this committee is the information we get about activities in our area, the view of other places around the country, insights like Jason's into how city government interacts with state government. One of the things that kills my soul is the fear that we wouldn't take action until we have implemented a bureaucratic solution, like making a master plan that'll be complete 6 months from now. And I'm curious if we can make changes before the master plan is complete, anticipating that they are of value to this committee, like these periodic reports about pedestrian fatalities.
Well, I can speak to the public comments of those pedestrian fatalities and how impactful they are. As a public engagement specialist, I actually look at community events and I go and set up tables and speak about whatever's happening within our group. And that's actually how I met this couple. They did not come to us. They did not know about us. So our team is very active in the community. We go out and we are bringers. And so we're starting at the grassroots of where the people live. And so I met that couple and I had some blinking lights, 911 blinking lights on the table, and they came over to share with me. And then they told me about, Mr. Coleman actually told me about their friends that one had was killed. And at first I thought it was both of them, as you heard. But we're actively engaged in the community and we go out and we bring the people here. So that's how we're going to make changes, is by being out in the community, telling our story, giving the public a voice to hear. And so with that public comment, it just doesn't sit here. It becomes public record. It goes up to the technical advisory committee. As soon as I receive that public comment, I email Jason and we started a conversation about whatever we needed to talk about. And he knew all the details to take the conversation forward, to start working it. I stayed in communication with that couple. I kept inviting them to make their voice heard. Once again, next it'll be going to the policy board. So anytime we get a public comment, anytime we get something that we can impact change, that we're facilitating that at a local level. We don't wait for a bureaucratic system to approve communication and caring about our citizens.
Would it be helpful for this committee to get feedback from the TAC?
Pardon me?
Would it be helpful for this committee to get feedback from the TAC? It sounds like we've got a flow of information from you all to the TAC. Would it be helpful to know what their response is?
Well, I think that's.
Is that your role?
I can answer
Jack, yes.
I can answer this. So I normally go to every one of the meetings. So I'll go to the TAC, I'll go to this meeting because of course I'm here, and I also go to I call it the power brokers meeting, or the policy board meeting. That's where you meet all the mayors and everybody else in the cities and stuff like that. The people that are making the decisions and the changes. So I go to all of them, and I can honestly say, and probably Jason can agree, and everybody else that's here, what we do, the TAC looks at and the policy board looks at. Like the stuff that the TAC, the slide that I brought up with the fatalities, that was something the TAC talked about last week. It just hit me as, that's part of what we do. Is it a TAC mission? Yeah, but the TAC needs our input. And that comes with an active transportation plan, which this is what this is building to. So the active transportation plan builds to that, to pass through the TAC, to pass to the policy board. Now, we're taking into consideration fatalities, but also safe roads for all. Jason mentioned that plan. That's another thing to look into. We have safe roads for everybody. It should never have to come to a fatality to make a change. Can we be progressive? And a lot of times, the cities and the planners, they're not looking at, well, maybe they are. I can't say. Maybe they're looking at the future, but with the growth of Bell County and how it's going, the future is, one, hard to predict. So maybe, like I said before, they made those connections. But again, I don't sit in any of those meetings, and I try to be quiet, but there's been a few times where Anita has spoke up and spoke what I was thinking, so I didn't have to talk. So we're a voice that's going to be heard, and that's actually heard on the next presentation. It all builds on this presentation. This is why I love this meeting. It all builds to the next thing. Good.
Sorry, I don't want to cut you off. I just want to jump in, Keller, and to respond to the bureaucracy thing. I don't know if we maybe talked about this last time, but the purpose of this plan is, and we're a planning organization, that's what we do, planning. We advise implementation, but we don't do any of that ourselves. That's what Jason and all the other cities do. Yeah, Joe. But the purpose of this plan isn't to like, oh, we have to have this until we can do something. Like there's stuff happening, and Anita and I were talking, and there's a lot of really good, like Temple has their trails plan, Belton has one, Parker has, like there's a lot of city plans, and part of our role as the MPO is, okay, how can we make sure those are all fitting together and connected? And Anita's also added in, how are we connecting to Austin south of us, Waco north of us? So that's really like, this plan is intended to look at our region as a whole and see where where's stuff right now, where are their planned projects, and really focusing on where the gaps are, and how can we improve safety through filling those gaps with space. Like at the end of the day, that's what it's for. And if you don't know where the gaps are, how can you plan for that? How can you solve a solution? So it's kind of all in one, and it's not intended to be a, hey, if it's not in the plan, it doesn't happen. But like, if we don't look at it if we don't look at our whole region and everything that's out there and try and connect it all together, that's what we're here to do as the MPO, and that's the purpose of this plan. So it's really not intended to be bureaucratic. It's intended to supplement what is already going on and pull it all together.
Yeah, don't deride the value of planning. I think that is essential. I'm just got fearful that we weren't going to make changes in our process until the September deadline.
When you say changes in the process, what do you mean by that?
for instance, like Katie requested that we have a map and identify fatalities at each meeting, so we know where problem areas are. So
Yeah. Okay,
plan
yeah,
solutions.
and I'd say those are all different pieces. I mean, this is not gonna stop that. This is something, an initiative that we're working on.
Right. And we have our dashboard on our website that shows fatalities, and that's a conversation that staff has regularly. In fact, yesterday, Callie and I, we were already brainstorming about some ideas that we had access to. One is that pet bike counter loaner program, and we had the conversation, what if somehow we could get that set up out there? You know, but that's not our jurisdiction. We have to bring in Jason and the city of Temple to talk about that. And then we also have the new speed limit signs that, were not speed limit signs, they're digital for speed counters. The MPO can loan those out to communities. And so we're proactively having conversations on what we can do, how we can improve safety, and coordinate what's happening within the cities and our region.
There are processes for projects, from conception, identifying liabilities and advantages,
Yes.
and then implementation and phases of implementation. I'd really like to see us have either periodic reporting of progress on projects or web-based identification of where we are on a project. There was one we entertained 3 or 4 years ago for a website for trails. I don't know what happened to that. I think we even recommended spending money on a organization that was going to create a trails resource for us. And I don't know where we are on that project. It would be helpful if we had a resource for what the projects of this committee are, where we are on those projects.
I think that, Karen, I want to take over your
No, go
control,
ahead. I
but
think-
let's kind of into the next
Yeah.
section, so.
So if we go to the next section, and it kind of builds on, so this whole meeting builds on the active master transportation plan. And then we,
Go ahead.
you can go.
I can, if you want, I can just to respond to Keller, and we maybe, I know you made this comment last time, we might have got mixed up in what you were wanting to talk about. It sounds like you're not so concerned about the scoring process and more, hey, projects were approved, what's happening with them? And to be honest, as an MPO, we're working on tracking projects. Once they go to construction, it's a little bit hard for us to get updates, and that's not really a fault of anybody. It's just because we're not involved with the construction of projects, we're involved with the funding of them. That's a gap that we recognize and we're trying to solve. And, you know, we've been talking about some sort of better tracking system than what we currently have. That's not going to be a quick solution or a near solution. We've had online maps before, and I think maybe that's what you're talking about with the trails, where there was.
I think the trail, we were gonna set up a trail page and we talked about it and initially got involved. And then I think it became more complicated than we originally thought and time consuming. So it kind of got turned off. And I think that's what we ended up with, is it got turned off because the complications of how much the staff has to do overall, and then continue something that's a project like, that'd be great for me, for somebody outside that's not getting paid to be involved and be able to do it. But again, I'm sure that falls in the political realm or red tape of giving someone access to put stuff on a web page and make sure that all the trail systems can identify, because we're going to highlight different areas and different trails. And I think it just became too complicated for the current staff.
And it's also a question of staff's core responsibilities. There's the need to have and the nice to have. This started to fall into the nice to have.
That being said, I will say, I hear your comment about tracking. I think that's something we recognize and we want to do better at, even not just for this committee, but for TAC and policy board. And we get TechStat to come share updates on the really big projects, because policy board cares about I-14, and that impacts a lot of people. But I think all the smaller projects are also important. And so I can't say that next meeting will have a whole big solution, but hear your feedback, and we'll keep working at how can we do a better job reporting. I know that's something we want to do, even just for some of our planning efforts, is like very funded project, and like Jason was saying earlier, how are we, once it's implemented, how did it do? Was it a good project? Was it not a good project? That's a current lack, just for a bunch of different reasons, so.
You remember several years ago, the fellow that came and made a pitch about making a website?
And we had an app, I don't know.
Yeah, it's called Texas Trails or something. Did that get funded? Where is that?
We had an app and it didn't work out the way, and we looked at it, we tried it for a year, and I think the cost wasn't worth what we were putting into it, so. But we're always open to other solutions, and if something makes sense, then yeah, we want to consider it.
And to your point, Keller, I know that at our last meeting, we discussed and we shared the frustration regarding scoring and follow-up. And so that's why this item was added to the agenda today. However, you know, as the conversation's going, I'm probably wasn't very clear on what you were needing us to deliver here today.
Well, and I think this is part of the delivery. So this is the scores that we came up with whenever we had to go through the livability projects for 2023. Everybody had the opportunity to do the spreadsheet. Believe me, if it hadn't been for James and Anita, it would have been confusing to anybody to get. So they have set up a questionnaire that you should go on and look at and answer the questions and say, there's the QR code for it, with the tax scoring assessment. So if you go back to the other slide, and 6 TAC members and 2 BPAC members rated that. But the 2 BPAC members that rated the scoring process on the projects that were submitted, of the 107 projects that were submitted, we were 60% of their top 10. So in their top 10, 6 of our projects was within the tax top 10. But I can tell you, I sit in the meetings after this, and believe me, they were confused, and there were a few people upset that their projects, we didn't rate their projects as high as they thought it should be. There were some extenuating circumstances that we find out later, but I don't think I would have changed my voting just off because somebody put a school somewhere and it wasn't on the map when I looked at it. I get it, kids need to go to school, it needs to be safe, but I also think that whenever the school goes to the city and says, we're gonna put a school here, hey, well, you guys need to pay for the sidewalk to get there. It's just me. I can't change policy. I'm not here to change policy. It just makes sense to me. It's like when you own a business and you change your business or you build a community, you have to put a sidewalk on the major road. I mean, that's part of the Temple's policy.
But you would escalate if you knew 3 school kids died.
Well, but then it comes to death. So
Yeah, that's the data.
That's the data.
Let me clarify something you just said. I think it's an important point. This board and even TAC doesn't necessarily make policy. We have the opportunity to influence that policy. That's a responsibility that you, whether you knew it or not, you signed up for when you said, I'll sit on this board. When we scored the projects to what you were talking about, some people were upset that their project didn't score well at BPAC at the time. That's because only 2 BPAC members scored the project. So if I'm the only vegetarian in the room and we say, what do we want for lunch? And I'm the only one that votes and says hummus, and everybody else in the room wants hamburgers. A lot of people are going to be upset that we're not having hamburgers. Well, a lot of people should have voted for hamburgers. So I will put it on you. I'll look everybody in the eye. When we do the next round of project scoring and they send the score sheet out for ATAC to score the project, vote for hummus, hamburger, tacos, and minestrone. I don't care, but vote. Do your scoring, influence that policy. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I think the influence that we provided, I think, I don't remember how it got rated. I don't know if the top 10 got picked on the rating scale. I don't remember the end results, but again, we don't make policy, but we can implement change and influence that change to what we need to do. So what Anita has up here, and I stole all her thunder, is if you scan that QR code, it goes to a questionnaire about the scoring process. Now, if you open the scoring process and you looked at that big graph that you had right there, and all the numbers that you were supposed to put in, it was confusing. Hands down was confusing. You clicked on it, it gave you a map, it told you what you were looking for. You clicked off, you took a vote, and you put a number between, I think, 1 and 5. I don't remember what it was. There were some other ones that you could pick 1 to 10 or 1 to 7. It told you what you could pick. It was confusing. So what this is if you open that map and it was confusing, then tell the MPO that it was confusing and that's why you didn't do it. I mean, literally, it took James sitting down with me for me to do it.
And I'll extend the same offer. I mean, I've been on both sides of the scoring process, so I have a pretty good understanding of it. If you're not sure, how do I think so? I'll walk you through it.
We can hold a workshop as well.
I think I'm one of the ones that did not vote, and I felt frustrated because I did vote in the one before, and I had no idea what the outcome of it was. And then when I looked at voting, it was so complex, there wasn't accessible background information to allow me to make an informed ranking, and I thought I shouldn't make a stupid vote. We know what happens when people make stupid votes.
I know Mike Anderson was the same way. He's part of the Tri-City Bikes. He's alternate to them, and he had the same comment. It was just so confusing. He didn't think he could make a change. But believe me, it was fun to sit in the meetings after that and listen to everybody get fired up that didn't get rated.
I'll say this, one of the reasons the scoring criteria are complicated the way they're set up, the way they are, some of it comes from federal guidance. If you're going to get federal money, you have to score in these categories. But as we've gone over the years and adjusted these things, there's a question of, do these criteria favor a small community? Do they favor a big community like Temple? Temple and Killeen can do all the engineering and all the crash analysis and write a 5-page narrative that makes it clear what the project is going to do, why it's doing it. Salado maybe doesn't. And we have revised multiple times the scoring criteria, the weighting. It says it's 5 points for tourism. And what do we derive those 5 points from? We've added detail. So part of the reason the scoring criteria are detailed, and I know I'm not peppering you, but I am, is because folks like you have come out and said, hey, the scoring criteria don't cover it. They don't address it. And we've tried to make those changes to address it. So that's one of the reasons they're complicated.
Yeah.
We didn't set out to be.
You've given me
pains in the ass.
Expert explanation in the past. I appreciate it.
Well, and one of the things, Keller, that staff is actually reviewing the tax scoring process is that TAC asked for that. Am I correct?
Yeah.
Because they even looked at it through a lens if it was a little bit more complicated than it should have been. So that's one of the reasons that this is moving forward with a review. Is there an easier way to accomplish the scoring? And I appreciate everything that you bring to the table. And so if, just keep the conversation going. And we are running on a tight rope here. So.
Go for it.
So if you don't get it,
We can put it back on. Yeah.
I'll email it to the link to y'all here. To everybody.
Next.
Oh, that was public comments.
Public comments, this is you.
Thank you.
Regarding public input received through January 2025. Anita.
Thank you. So staff attended 2 events and spoke about the 2025 Transportation Alternatives Grant through TechStop, and spoke to about 34 people at one, and we received 2 comments at that event. And then at the other event, which was the mayor's prayer breakfast between Temple and Belton, that's where I met the families and friends that spoke today regarding that death. So we're receiving public input, and it's very meaningful.
Go ahead, we're going to go right into staff updates.
Yes.
Agenda number 10.
Ryan and SITCOG leadership are following the federal executive orders regarding our grants that fund all of our work. If anyone is interested in the TechStop TA 2025 call for projects, the preliminary application deadline is February 21st. They've opened that up to some smaller organizations. So it's got some great opportunities in there. The next TechStop VPAC meetings are April 25th, 2025. That's in Austin, and July is a Zoom one, and then in October, there is the one in Austin again. And our meetings follow those meetings so that we can bring back relevant information that matters to us.
Anita, do we anticipate changes in federal funding, the changes in administration?
James?
It's unknown that we don't know what the full, how it's all going to shake out. You know, there's lots, a lot of those executive orders are going to go through the courts, and TechStop doesn't really know. I think some of it depends on the next big transportation bill, which is up for reauthorization 2026. There was elevated funding in the last bill, but if they pass a bill that doesn't fund as much, we could see decreased funding or changes in what they're funding. I know I feel like I saw something that maybe active transportation wasn't as high a priority, but it's gonna take a while to shake out. We're monitoring it. I know that the biggest concern was the freeze in funding and that potentially impacting the MPO, but I think that's paused for now. That would be the biggest immediate impact if they say, hey, we're not gonna give the funding that we said we would.
Will that be an agenda item if that occurs?
Yeah, well, you're right. I mean, we're monitoring. There's a lot of people monitoring it. We get updates from that organization of national MPOs. They have a lot of people in Washington doing advocacy work for MPOs, tracking all of that, giving updates. So if we know more or something changes, we'll provide an update.
James, would you like to report on the
It was low in December and January. No, we had, it's in the low part of the year, probably increase in the next few months.
I believe that James Wickham from Hill Country Transit District had a member comment.
So for the last quarter, we've been tracking the microtransit ridership, and one of the metrics that we can pull out of there is how many people use the bicycle racks. For October, November, December of last year, there was a total of 0.08% of our ridership that used a bicycle rack. Now, we weren't tracking those numbers before, but I suspect that they were a lot higher when we were still using the fixed routes, just because now it's going to a curb-to-curb system for everybody rather than having to be dropped off at a stop and riding to their locations.
Thank you, James.
Any other member comments? Only one I have to say, if you have any recommendations for the active transportation plan, please send them to Anita and James, and they could possibly implement that into their program. That'd be great. They could probably use some of that help. Anything else? And we'll adjourn this meeting at 11:18. Have a great day.